Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and we are on book 18 of the Marcus Didius Falco series, Saturnalia. And for those who don't know, which will be some, assuming anybody is listening, which I always assume nobody is listening, Saturnalia is the Roman Christmas. That is obviously Christianity, not the same thing as the Roman collective pagan religion thing, whatever you might have called it. But Saturnalia is the thing that that Christmas is effectively jammed over. So there's a lot of feasting, there's a lot of gift giving, and there are some things that died out during the Middle Ages, such as what some of you may have seen in the Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is the Feast of Fools, the period of misrule. The idea is that you have an inversion where slaves get to pretend to be king for the day and so on. As is judiciously depicted in this book, of course, this is mostly given lip service. You know, this is really an opportunity for the wealthy to slum it rather than for the poor to have any sort of power during a day at all. You know, they give them some nice food and let them wear nicer clothing than usual, and then the next day it's business as usual, and since every single slave or peon or serf or what have you knows this, there's only so much they're going to do in terms of so-called misrule of telling people to do naughty things, because you know that tomorrow you will go back to being a slave and the people who own you will go back to not doing what you say, and they will remember this. So it's always smartest to, you know, if you get picked to be the person who is the king for a day, the wisest thing to do is to basically avoid doing anything at all that might be seen as significantly risque, let alone pretending you have any real power. But anyhow, it's basically Christmas, and that comes with all the pitfalls of Christmas, all of those traditional things of we're going to have a giant family gathering, and Uncle Who's-It is going to get drunk and embarrass everybody, and somebody's kid is going to cause trouble, and there will be screaming matches between family members, because you know, that's Christmas. And so, going into this, Io Saturnalia, or possibly Saturnalia, I don't actually speak any Latin, whether proper Roman Latin or even Church Latin. The thing is that Falco sees this incoming and sort of takes a deep breath and isn't really looking forward to it in that traditional way of adults who, you know, now that you're old enough that you have to be the one to spend the money on gifts, you have to be the one to actually put together the Christmas party food, you have to be the one hosting, you have to be the one to clean up after the Christmas party, and suddenly it stops being, you know, quite the joy that it was when you were 10 years old, and, you know, all that mattered was that you were going to get a bunch of presents and run around and throw wrapping paper in all directions, and so on. And so he's not really looking forward to it. And then things get even worse as we see the resurrection of a character who we had left behind many, many, many books ago. You may recall, assuming you've read these, assuming I even really talked about Velida, I don't even recall that many books back. We're on 18 books in now, and you know that with at minimum a week, 2 weeks between each of these, it's been quite a while since I read it. Velida was the priestess of a German Celtic tribe, and she had caused some trouble many books ago and had taken Falco and some local soldiers captive, and Justinus, who is Falco's effectively brother-in-law of, you know, the brother of his common-law wife, who he insists on saying he's married to, even though they haven't had an actual wedding, and I grant common law is valid today, but still, it's a little hinky. Anyways, So his brother-in-law, Justinus, had showed up, and he had saved the day by, to a certain extent, reaching an mutual understanding with the priestess, and everybody basically assumed, and it's pretty heavily implied in this book, that the two of them had had a brief affair at the time, and so Justinus has this beautiful blonde barbarian priestess in his past that he still holds a torch for. And the news comes down that one of the upper echelons, indeed somebody that Rutilius Gallicus, who we met several books back and has been a sort of, kind of, almost maybe sort of friend to Falco, has brought Velida back to Rome and is intending to have her be the centerpiece of what he is hoping will be a triumph. That is, a giant parade where you show off your, victories as a military political leader, and you have a giant parade and party, which in this case was going to end with the really horrific public execution of Velida as, a symbol of trouble being vanquished and so on and so forth. She had been brought to Rome under the impression that she was to effectively be a hostage. She would be kept as a, honored guest and not allowed to leave, but she would just be a hostage. And then she overhears that they're going to have a triumph and kill her, and of course she legs it, because, yeah, you would. So Falco basically gets called in to track her down, and he is, as often is the case, in competition with other official government people, such as Anacrates, the man who tried to have him killed and then tried to, horn in on Falco's sister, and then basically set a whole bunch of thugs on her when she turned him down, because he's just like that. Anyways, so they're in direct competition, and Velida's running around, and everybody knows that Justinus has a thing, and then, Anacrates takes him hostage in the hopes of convincing her to come along, and that's a plan that gets made, much fun gets made of, because Velida is from Germany. She is a German Celt. While she does speak Latin, she doesn't read it. In point of fact, there was an incredibly low literacy rate among Celtic tribes back in the day, even lower than would have been in ancient Rome, precisely because they had a written language. You have Ohmstones out in, Ireland, and there were ways and means of writing things down, but it wasn't something as convenient and simple and straightforward for reading, or as easily accessible for reading as, Latin with its straightforward phonetic letters. And yes, Latin was phonetic back in the day, but that's because they invented the letters to represent the language, and that's why Latin is phonetic, while English is not, because English is a horrifying Frankenstein's monster of a beast of a language. Anyways, it's, there's a reason why people describe English as 3 angry raccoons in a trench coat, and that's because English is 3 angry raccoons in a trench coat, which Latin is not. But anyways, I digress, because, there's a reason I call these ramblings. Anyways, so you have this happening, and Justinus has since gotten married, so his wife is aware that he still holds a torch for the blonde barbarian who is running loose in the city, and she's really, really angry. She's been angry with him ever since several books ago when they went on what was supposed to be their honeymoon, and he took them on a trek on foot across the desert, and he has no idea what he did wrong. She's there going, "We're going to have a romantic honeymoon." And he's like, "We're going to trek on foot across the desert." And she's just, why? I thought we were gonna be married and do married people stuff, not people hunting for treasure in deserts stuff. What is wrong with you? Anyways, their relationship has been on the rocks ever since he did that and didn't know what he did wrong, because he seems to be somebody who is very, very charming, but has a lack of understanding of women in a way that suggests a lack of understanding of people he is trying to romance. That is, he doesn't understand what romance is. Anyways. But, so he's, being used, and Anacrates, the plan that Anacrates was doing that was going to be made so much fun of was he was writing an advertisement on a wall somewhere saying, hey, you want to find Justinus? Here. And everybody said, yeah, but she can't read. How's she going to find your ad? She could stand in front of your advertisement. She wouldn't know what it was for because she can't read it. Anyways, so that's a thing. So this whole book where, Falco is solving a beheading and tracking down a missing political prisoner and so on is basically shot through with Christmas drama. It is shot through with my relatives got drunk and said problematic things. It is shot through with him telling his sisters that you should absolutely surprise our father with an incredibly painful piles operation so that his rear end is incredibly sore throughout all of Saturnalia because you surprised him with the gift of a painful thing. It's like that. It's Christmas stuff. And, yes, Saturnalia is not actually Christmas, but there's the quality of it, the family time, the gift giving, the screaming children, the whole thing. It's shades of Christmas future, I suppose, because it's not Christmas past, because this happened before Christmas existed. But it's a thing you can see all of these lines, and it's an interesting thing because it's a repeated thing to consider whenever you write historical fiction, and that is that human people 2,000 years ago were still human people. That is, we have not changed that much as a species, and while social mores change, while the details change, the languages change, Lindsey Davis has a very interesting end word, I suppose you could call it, in which she talks about inventing words because the thing is that slang, we don't actually know slang and colloquialism from ancient Rome because there's a whole lot of ancient Roman writing stuff that we will never know because most of what we have is either highly formal writing or else leftover bits of graffiti that had been left on walls, but graffiti doesn't actually give you a comprehensive understanding of stuff like that. But anyway, so she has a whole there's a whole endnote thing that's very interesting. I don't know if it's in all editions or just this one, but it's nonetheless interesting. But the thing is that it's the issue of historical fiction that one always needs to remember that people are people and to write people as being people, which is why when you see this and you see Saturnalia and Saturnalia is just Christmas, that's because that's what an annual celebration where everybody gets the family together and exchanges gifts would be. It would be just like Christmas. Anyways, so as I run smack up against my self-imposed time deadline, I think that's basically all that I'm going to be saying. And, yeah, I will see you all next week.